Hi there, this is Lucas from Webflow, and today we're going to take a look at Dynamic Map for Webflow. With Dynamic Map, you can create CMS-connected maps just like this one. Each of your collection list items becomes a location pin, and you can add cool features just like this tooltip that you can see here, a pop-up, a liking and favoriting feature, and so much more. And today we're going to take a deep dive through all the features that Dynamic Map offers. All right, let's get started with the initial setup. So to get things started, you should move over to the CMS and create a new collection list. I will call this real estate property. And then we press create collection. In order to set this up a bit faster, I created a CSV file that we now upload so that we have just like a bunch of items to get started with. So now I'm gonna grab the CSV file and insert it here. The first row is my header and I press continue. So then we can see that the field name and slug are automatically connected, and I have to create the other fields that are necessary to import the CSV file. The most important fields for Dynamic Map are latitude and longitude, which are these two. These are the actual geo-coordinates that allow us to display the items of your CMS actually as pins on your map. So let's create a new field. We should always choose a plain text field for latitude and longitude and create new fields for latitude and longitude with the same name. Then we have a price field, which we do want to create as a number field for filtering later. And then we have different filter styles. Dynamic Map is allowing you to filter via option fields, so we should create different option fields for these different options. So as you can see, in the CSV, I have the different options: townhouse, apartment, studio, and entire place for my filter type townhouse. Then I do have the property style luxury. Let's give that an option too. Luxury, premium, basic, and villa. And then I do have a bunch of different other amenities that I'm going to feature. So let's go ahead with this one. Create an option field too. This is just marked with yes and no, and later we'll see why, because this is a kind of a multi-reference feature that we enabled. So later I'm going to show you how that works. Let's import the 200 real estate properties. Right. Okay, this took some time, but now we can see that all of our items are uploaded properly. And if I go to the next page and get one example item, we can see that we have the different fields we just connected in here. And now we are ready with our setup to get started implementing Dynamic Map. So let's open up Dynamic Map app, which is this extension for Webflow. And all the elements that have been created in the background, we can just ignore this and go to the crew NCF map items, which is our collection list, and connect these to the real estate properties. And then we have to press the collection list connected button and press continue. Now we need to copy over this code inside the list item embed that we have over here, and close, code pasted, and continue. And then we need to connect the second collection list, which is the tooltip and pop-up collection list down here. So we have to connect this one with the real estate properties collection list as well, and press connected, continue, and that's it. Your first map has been implemented successfully. And to show you that this actually works, we can now close Dynamic Map app and press publish. And now we should see that the map is there with a lot of pins on it. And yep, that's actually the case. So this is our first map. We can see that on click, a pop-up appears, on hover, tooltip appears. We can browse through the list, and we can click on items to trigger the pop-up and tooltip. All right, let's get started now with our first feature, which is the different map settings that we can choose. So we can select one of 4 different map providers, which are MapLibre, Mapbox, Google Maps, and OpenStreetMap. So our default map provider, MapLibre, is an open source project. It is a fork of Mapbox, so it looks very stylish and very modern, but it comes with no API restrictions and limits whatsoever. So you should use this one if you're afraid of like hidden cost or additional costs that might occur when you have a lot of visitors, like 100,000 per month. And then we do have Mapbox, which is the most customizable option we do have here. Mapbox is specialized in creating custom styled maps and making them easily accessible for the users. And then we do have the classic one, Google Maps, of course, if you want to go for familiar style. And we do have OpenStreetMap, which is another open source variant, which looks a bit more basic than MapLibre. All right, let's get started with MapLibre. And you can see that in the map style, we do have different styles like positron, bright, dark, fjord. All of these can be used for free. And then you can also create a custom look, which is a bit more tricky than when using Mapbox, which is more like a out-of-the-box experience. So what you see is what you get. You customize the map and then it appears. For MapLibre, you will see that you have to enter a map tile URL. So how this works is you create a JSON file with all data regarding the MapLibre, which can be done with different kinds of platforms. For example, you can use the Mapputnik editor, which is looking like this, and then we can edit different settings, and then we need to download the JSON code, upload it to, for example, GitHub, and then paste the link inside the map provider link. And then you will see that you can also use completely custom styles with MapLibre. But for now, we want to go with the dark map, for example. Let's press save. And then publish Webflow to see how this looks on our live page. So let's go to the page, refresh, and let's zoom in here a bit. And yeah, now we do have a dark map. So then let's take a look at the Google Maps option, which is looking like this. Now you can see some red borders around this. So something's wrong. That is because we didn't select a map style yet. And then we also need to insert a Google Maps API key. That can be a bit of an annoying task, but it's totally handleable. We do have a little tutorial on that on our documentation page. So for now, I'm just getting the API key. When pasting the API key, make sure that in your Google Cloud Console, which looks like this, you also whitelist your domain down here. So for your domain, you need to press add, get your domain, insert it here, and then put an asterisk behind this so that all subpages are equally whitelisted. You have to do this with your live page as well. Otherwise, you will just see a gray wall instead of the actual map that you want to see. And really important, you need to press the save button down here, because otherwise this will not work. So after saving, let's go back to our project. First we need to save though in Dynamic Map App. And let's press publish. And now we should see a Google Map style map here. Yes, so this is the familiar view we know from Google. So this is also possible using Dynamic Map App. All right, let's continue with the Mapbox map provider. So with Mapbox, it's a bit special since you can create a custom map style very easily. Let's head over to Mapbox and see how that looks. So this is my Mapbox dashboard. I can see my default public token over here. I should copy this one and paste it inside this access token field. And to create a custom map, I can go over to the style editor. So in Mapbox, as you can see, there are different kinds of layers that you can change. For example, the road and the color of the land, for example, which I can change here to a different color. For example, I can pick a brighter color for this one and go for like a dark kind of gloomy red look for this one. Maybe a bit more here. Then I can copy this style URL insert it in the Mapbox style URL input in Dynamic Map app, press save, and publish the selected page. And now I should be able to see a dark looking map like in our design. And there it is. So in Mapbox, you can really create super custom maps. The only thing you need to take in mind or to keep in mind is that Mapbox as well as Google are companies that make money offering their service. They're not open source. So in the end of the day, they want to make money somehow. They do have some really generous free tiers. So for Mapbox and Google Maps, it should be around 100,000 visitors until you have to pay for this. But you have to keep it in mind that it's something that can happen. So if you want to make sure that you never pay anything additionally to your dynamic map subscription, make sure to select MapLibre as your map provider and set one of the default styles here. All right, let's continue with the next topic, which are the CMS item list states. So we can see in Dynamic Map app, we created the map and auto inserted all of these different elements. On top of this, we do have the instructions, which we can delete now. And then we do see a bunch of different elements that have been inserted by Dynamic Map app. The first one is the crew NCF map settings. This one is inheriting all of our map settings and all of our things that are set by the app that you created before. So you should never delete this one. Then we do have the filter wrapper. This one should also be kept by you. You should not delete this one. As well as the crew NCF map items list, which is in the NCF map wrapper. So the wrapper is containing the crew NCF map items, which is our item list, our CMS, as well as the actual map itself. This is the NCF map inner wrapper, which is containing the map itself, which is marked with the crew NCF map class, and the zoom controls as well. Then below this, you have this style guide, which is hidden on live sites. So you don't have to manually hide it or should never delete it on here, since this contains the elements that we can just style using the style guide and not natively in Webflow, since we need to apply some kind of special logic to make this work, which is not always 100% compatible with how Webflow thinks about elements. There are only a bunch of elements that we can style down here, but we should keep them. We should keep the style guide. In general, you can see that all the items containing a crew before the NCF tag and the class name are marked as crucial, meaning they are important for Dynamic Map to work. If you ungroup one of these elements, for example, the style guide, then you will see a red border appearing around the whole crew NCF Dynamic Map div. So if I now reset this with Command Z, you can see it's back to normal. Whenever this happens, don't panic, just press Command Z and you're good to go again. Please just make sure to not delete something and reset the page. So reloading the page in Webflow, since this prevents the interaction for undoing, and that leads to your map being broken, because afterwards you can't really fix this except for manually reinserting the elements. You can see that in the different elements we do have custom attributes set. So it's actually not the classes that are important, but the attributes that are set in the classes. To see a whole overview of the different classes and their attributes and how this whole structure works, I can highly recommend you to dive into our docs article on this, which is this one, the How Dynamic Map Works article in our documentation. And in here you can see the whole DOM and attribute structure with a little explanation for it, in case you want to go really deep. All right, let's go back to our map. So as said before, now we want to start working on the map item list. To get started, let's set the map item to an actual CMS connected value. And to make sure that this is actually displayed properly when an element is selected, we have to go down to the style guide, where we can see the active class added to the crew NCF map list item. So this is the active class, so the active state of this element, which we can set right here. This is pretty similar to how Webflow works in general. So you just add a combo class called active, which is set by us manually down here. But you can of course also see how this looks on your map list itself on top of here. But then of course all the items look always active by default. So here should be just the crew and safe map list item class, and down here you can modify the active state and how it looks. So the red is a bit ugly, I feel. Let's set this to a light gray and publish the page. And now you can see that the active state of the pin element is in sync with the active state of our map item list, and that the list item is now displayed gray. And for maps that shouldn't display an item list at all, you can't delete the crew NCF map items wrapper, since this is important for the map to work, but you can just hide the element using display none. So now you can see our grid breaking this layout a little bit, but now it should be fixed. Now we can see that we just see the map itself and the item list is hidden. Publish this. And as you can see, now the map is full screen and the item list is hidden. So this is like a more immersive kind of experience. And let's continue with the pins. So the pin elements are set down here in the style guide. You can see we have 3 different pin variants. The first is the default state that we always see, the hover state, and the active state. Similar to the list item, we can see that these work by different classes. So we have the crew NCF pin, which is the default state, the crew NCF pin with the hover state, and with the hover class as a combo class, which is the hover state, and then the same goes for the active state. Upload a new asset, for example, or take one of the assets we do have here, for example, the heart icon. Let's select this one, choose image, select the heart icon. And then you can see that the style of our pin changed. Let's publish this. And yes, now we can see the newly inserted pin on our map in action. If you want to change the active state completely, then I would suggest to go to the active class, so to the active pin state, and for example, set this to, let's set this one to the outline heart and the active state to the filled heart. Achieve this. You can also work with a background fill and all other attributes that you can set to the crew NCF pin class. Okay, now let's set custom pins. Maybe you want to show one pin with a specific and different pin than all the other items. And for that, in Dynamic Map, you can select the under the interactions panel, the individual pins per item setting. And then we need to create a new collection list field with an image element containing our future pin, our custom pin. We can create this directly in Dynamic Map. Let's call this field custom pin and click create. And then we have to press save, and you can see the save indicating with the yellow color that we do have to update the inserted code. Press save and close, code pasted, flow real quick, and go inside our CMS and select one of our items to upload a custom pin. So upload the custom pin here and then publish the item. Go back to design, press publish, and now we should see the first item using the custom pin. And here it is, our black pin that we just uploaded specifically just for our first item. So this feature is really useful if you want to highlight very specific pins, maybe 3 or 4 of them, without any special category. If you want to use different pins for different categories, so then you should really use the category pin feature, which allows you to set all pins for all items with the type apartment, for example, to a different pin variant. So that means if we want to show all apartments different to all of our townhouses on our real estate property map, then we should go for the category pin feature. So let's delete our custom pin. Press publish. and start implementing the category pin feature. So let's open Dynamic Map app and create a category filter first. So let's select the filtered field type and press save. Insert our code, press paste it. You can see how the items are created in the background. Let's remove the documentation wrapper for the filter set as well. And then you can see that we have 3 filter chips now that are filtering these items for different categories. Turn all elements with the townhouse category into a custom pin. Let's scroll down and duplicate our main pin, which is the crew NCF pin. And from here, we want to add an extra class, which is called NCF, and then minus the category, which is type in this case. And then we do have the category name, which in this case is townhouse. Then we want to change the pin image. Let's set our heart that we just set before for our example item and press publish. Now you should be able to see that all of your pins with the townhouse category use the dark heart as their pin icon. So to make sure this fits our current UI better, let's reload the designer as it is bugging a bit. To make sure this fits our UI, we should actually upload a real background image that is not looking like a placeholder. I uploaded this yellow pin. Now we have the red one for the normal pins. So for our default category look, which is everything that is apartment and studio, and all items with the category townhouse are now visible with this yellow pin. So we can apply this to all the different types of pins that we have. So let's duplicate the crew NCF pin again, duplicate the class, and select, instead of townhouse, our apartment real estate type. Okay, so in the NCF type apartment, let's change this to the heart again and press publish to see if it works. And now we can see we have the studio ones with the red, with the initial red icon. We do have the hard ones for the apartment type and the yellow ones for the townhouse. So let's check if it works. Townhouse works, apartment with the dark hearts works, and the studio ones with the red initial pin icon. All right. To make this work, you don't necessarily need the filter chips to be visible, but you should not delete them. So if I want to hide these, I can just press display none, and then I can still use custom pins, but don't need to display the filters that I just created for it. So let's reload the page, and I can see that I still have my custom pins for my different categories without the filter on top. To make sure that our location pins are properly resetted, let's scroll down and unstyle it again. So remove the yellow pin for the townhouse class and the dark heart background image for the apartment one, and delete these extra pins that we just created so that we just have the crew NCF pin left. All right, let's continue with the next feature, which is the map pop-up. To change your settings regarding the map pop-up, head over to the interactions panel in Dynamic Map app and unselect or select the show pop-up on click field, which is right below the custom pin image field. And if you want to hide the pop-ups on click, so if you don't want any pop-ups to appear, just unselect the pop-up on click, press save. Let's see if it worked. And yes, you can see we still have a tooltip, but we can't see the pop-up. Right, to re-enable the pop-up, head over to the interactions panel again and go to show pop-up on click, select it, press save, and minimize Dynamic Map app. So now you can see that the pop-up as well as the tooltip are visible down here in the style guide because they are special elements introduced by Dynamic Map. So to style everything regarding the pop-up, just make sure you're in the collection list NCF tooltip pop-up wrapper and in there inside the crew NCF pop-up itself and everything that is inside this div. So all the elements that you insert and place inside the crew NCF pop-up with the attribute NCF map pop-up content will be visible in every pop-up for your whole site. That means that I can now simply add a text block and give it a collection list value, for example, a price. Then let's wrap this inside a div block and create another text block for the currency, which is dollars in this case. And make a flex box. And we should also set the pop-up title to the actual property name. Now you can see we do have the name of our item as title, as well as the price in dollars down here. To close the pop-up, you can either click anywhere on the map, or you can press this NCF pop-up close button, which is also pasted inside the crew NCF pop-up. You don't have to keep it, you can delete it, but it's a good UX best practice to keep a close button. You can see this one has the NCF map pop-up close attribute in case you ever delete this and want to get it back. So now let's press publish. And we can see the pop-up again with the title we just set, the price we just set, different for all CMS items on the page. The close icon works, but clicking anywhere also closes the pop-up. A very similar logic applies to the tooltip. You can also toggle this in the interactions panel of Dynamic Map. You can now see if I untoggle it and press save, that the tooltip on the live page is not visible anymore. So now the tooltip is hidden, but the pop-up is still visible. And if I head over to interactions panel again and re-enable the tooltip on hover, it will be visible again. Regarding the tooltip, since it's closing and opening on hover, we don't have a closing class and a closing element, obviously, but everything inside the crew NCF tooltip item, so and inside the div with the attribute of NCF map tooltip content will be shown on the live page. So we can also add different elements on there. Let's get our div that we just created with the price and connect this to the name of our real estate properties as well. So now we have this tooltip showing the name and the object's price. Let's publish to see if it worked. And yes, we can see on every tooltip, we see the name of the item as well as the price. Let's continue with our next feature, which is the default zoom position on page load. Let's open Dynamic Map app, go to the interactions panel and go to custom start zoom position. If you enable this, you will see latitude and longitude inputs appearing as well as a zoom level. So what is this about? In some cases, you don't want to have the default angle, the default viewport that Dynamic Map is showing you. Dynamic Map is always showing all of the pins that are contained on your map and a little padding around this. So if I would have different pins, for example, also in Boston, the map would be zoomed out like this. So if I would have a pin up here. But if I just have one location in Boston, but all the other locations in Manhattan, for example, then it might be a good idea to set the default zoom position to this one, although we have pins outside the default viewport. So to achieve this one, we want to get the center location of the zoom start position we want to have. In this case, it's the Central Park. Yeah, it's quite the center of what we want to see. So let's go to a website called latlong.net, which is a converter of addresses to latitude and longitude coordinates. And let's put in the Central Park, New York. And we can see it found the Central Park with the proper coordinates. Let's copy the latitude value and the longitude value inside Dynamic Map app, and let's set a custom zoom position, for example 5. Press save. And now when publishing, we can see that instead of our custom zoom position super close to Manhattan, we are now zoomed out quite far. So let's go back and set the zoom position to 10. Press save and publish the page. And now we see that we actually achieve what we wanted to achieve. We are zoomed into Manhattan. Could go even closer. Let's change the zoom level to 15. Save. And as you can see now, we are way too close, but you get the point. All right, let's disable this feature again and go to our next feature, which is the show list items based on map view, or in other words, a live filtering feature that shows the list items based on the current map viewport. Let's enable the feature, press save, and see how this actually looks and behaves on our map. So you can see our default zoom level is back to normal, but now if I'm zooming in on Manhattan, I can see that all the pins that are not visible on my map are vanishing from the map item list on the left side. And this makes browsing so much easier, especially when you have a huge amount of pins. Alright, before disabling this feature, I also want to show you the update list items on map move, which is an additional feature for the item list feature. That means the updating happens a bit quicker and can feel a bit more snappy than before. So now you can see it's updating even faster than before. Alright, let's turn off the features and start with the filter and sorting features Dynamic Map offers. So let's start with the category filter. We already created one category filter with the apartment type before to create our custom pins, like our category pins. But now we want to create a category filter for the property style. So let's select the property style field, which is our option field we created before in the CSV import, and select the filter type filter chips and add the category filter. Now we need to press save and update the code in the crew NCF list item embed. Let's select all, replace it with this, save and close, and code pasted in Dynamic Map. Now we can see that the items are created in the background by Dynamic Map app. And with every category filter, there are always the NCF label wrapper that is inserted with the items, as well as the label flags containing this title and the link to the documentation. We can just delete this and also unwrap the NCF label wrapper, so that we just have the wrapper with our NCF filter tips in here. You can also ungroup this, but for now I want to keep it in this layout so that it looks like a real design. So to style our filter chips, we should head down to the style guide and see that we do have an active state for our chip in here, which is styled similar to the other elements we already styled before with the NCF filter chip class and the active state. So here we can give it a bigger border radius, for example, and change the color to be maybe a bit darker. And for a hover state, we can set the hover state similar to how it's always done in Webflow, with the state selector on the right side of the class. Select hover, and then we can give it opacity of 80%, for example. And we can do the same for the active class if we want to have a different hover interaction on this. You should also give this a transition so that it looks nicely. That is how we style our active class. Let's see if it worked. To our go to our real estate property CMS settings, go to type and create the new option loft. Press save save the collection list. And then let's go to our first item, which is the Quogi Oceanfront, and set the apartment type to loft and press publish. When heading back to our design, we can see that we still have the 3 filter chips that are set before, but we do not have the newly created option called loft. So how can we integrate the new option in here as well? To do that, head over to Dynamic Map app, press refresh. After pressing refresh, go to the filter and sorting panel, and you can see that the filter chip that we just created with the type is marked as unsynced. To get it back to sync, we can see that the missing filter chip for loft is now suggested down here with the button to insert the missing chip. And after pressing apply and save, we can see that Dynamic Map is inserting the filter chip for this one as well. So let's move this next to our other chips and delete the wrapper down here. In case you accidentally delete one of these, let's delete the lecture category filter chip. We can see that once we press refresh in Dynamic Map app, we also have an unsynced state for our property style. We go in here, we can see that the luxury chip is missing, and after pressing save, we can see that the same logic is applied to bring it back. Move it here, luxury, right here, and now we're back to normal. If you want to go for a different style, you can always change the class of the NCF filter chip. Let's call this one, for example, the NCF special filter chip. And now we can create a custom style just for these chips to make sure that the style is applied to all of them. Remove the old style and set the new one for all the different chips. And to make sure that we do have an active state as well for these, add the class active and create a different active style for these. Let's go for dark blue and a white text. Let's remove the active class, publish, and see it worked. Now we can see we have our townhouse, apartment, and studio category filter in the default look, and our newly added basic luxury premium loft type filter in our bluish design that we just created in Webflow. All right, let's go to the next feature, which is the address search. The address search can just be added to the map type Mapbox, since we're relying on the technology they offer to allow geolocation searching. After switching back to the Mapbox map provider, let's go down to filter and sorting and navigate to search address, postal code plus radius. And you can see that new inputs appeared below the search address checkbox, which is the unit, different radius options, the search pattern, and the option to disable the bounding box for the address search, as well as searchable countries. So let's go through these step by step. So first, we can change between meter, kilometer, mile, and yard. Let's keep it with kilometer this time. For the radius options, we can set a different radius we want to filter. So in our case, since we are going for the radius around Manhattan, New York in general, we want to add 20 as well as 50 for a broader radius. And for the search pattern, we want our users to be able to search for country, region, district. Let's keep it for postcode, place, maybe even address. Then for each address search, by default, Dynamic Map creates a bounding box around all of your items and the padding. That means even if the whole world is searchable, in theory, now I wouldn't be able to search a location in Peru, for example, since it's too far away from New York City. If I want to be able to search for items in Peru, even if there's no item close to Peru, I can just disable the bounding box for address search here. And to make sure that I can restrict the search even better, I can make sure that items in Peru aren't searched, but all items in the US or all regions in the US can be searched. So let's type in US. And now every address in the USA is searchable, all other countries aren't, and the user can search for postcode, place, street, and press save to insert the address search. And you can see dynamic map again inserts all required elements in the background. So you can see that this comes with the label wrapper as well. So we can remove the wrapper as well as the title, and we can see that we do have the address field wrapper in here, which is containing the search bar itself and two different interactions, which is for seeing my current location or setting my current location as a search default, as well as the clear button that allows me to clear the address search after searching for something. Then we do have the address range, which will display the different range options we selected before. And here we do have the placeholder for the suggested items that will appear once I start searching. So now you will see all of this in action. Let's press publish. Okay, let's search for Brookhaven. Brookhaven in New York, United States. And let's increase the radius to 50 kilometers. And we can see that the items in a radius of 50 kilometers appear on the map. Let's go for New York City. And we can see that now all of the items around the center of New York City appear. Let's go for 20 kilometers radius, and we can see that just the closest 20 kilometers away from our search radius are visible. Now let's continue with the next feature, which is the normal text search. To enable this, let's select the item search and select a searchable field, which in this case could be the name. And let's put a search delay of 200 seconds so that it 200 milliseconds so that it feels a bit more like a proper web app. Press save. And replace the whole code again, just like we did before. Press save and close. Press code pasted in dynamic map app. And you can see that dynamic map creates everything in the background. Let's display none our address range container. This will still work on the live map, but to work on Webflow, it's easier like this. So for the NCF search input, we can see it's just like a normal search input field from Webflow's form field. We can again ungroup everything regarding around our input. And now we can set the placeholder, search anything, or search property, and press publish. Now let's search for locations with the word river in them. And we can see that only these 4 items with the name river inside them are visible on our map. Let's move it again. We can see all icons are visible again. To make this search a bit more sophisticated, there's one trick that you could apply. So let's go to our real estate property CMS collection list and add a field that we call Smart Search and press save. Set the collection list, and Now let's go for the Riverside Drive Grand. And now we could insert words that are related to this property. For example, townhouse, river, boat, I don't know, some words that are related to this property, maybe Wi-Fi. And then when publishing the item and connecting our search to this field, let's go ahead and change this to our smart search, press save, reinsert our code, place everything, code pasted. And now when publishing, we can see that when typing in boat, we can find our Riverside Drive Grand. So this is really cool in case you want to create a more sophisticated search experience alongside the address search bar. To do something like this, I would highly recommend using generative AI to create all of these different smart search attributes, as this would take forever to do this manually. All right, let's open Dynamic Map app and continue with the next feature, which is the custom URL parameters. The custom URL parameters, go to filter and sorting and scroll down to create URL parameters and press save. What you can see now is that when publishing this, all of our filters add something to our URL. Filters, we said the apartment filter and the basic type filter are both set. So what this allows us to do is create a link from this filter setting. For example, let's set the default search for New York City and 20 kilometers radius. And now if we insert this in our browser, the map will load with the correct settings applied. And this allows you to set default filter states for your map when, for example, linking from a different subpage. Let's continue with our next feature. Let's turn off the URL parameters for a second and go to the list sorting. So the list sorting allows you to search different field types, like a number field for the price and a name. And you could also insert a date here to allow a default sort order as well as different sort options for your user. In this case, we want to allow sorting for the price, and we want to include both low to high as well as high to low option. And we want to include sorting for the name, which is by default A to Z and then Z to A. And the default sort order, so the first sort order a user sees on the live page, should be the name A to Z. And when pressing save, we can see we have to save and update the code embed again. Let's go ahead and do that. Place everything, press save and close, press code pasted in Dynamic Map app. And you can see that Dynamic Map inserted the sort element. Let's ungroup it as well. And now you can see the sort by default in here is set from price low to high. However, when updating and publishing our map, you can see that the default sort is name A to Z, and then we can change it from Z to A, as well as price low to high and high to low. Check it out if it worked. So this is 55,000, 45,000, 45, 42, 42, 39. So it seems to be working. All right, let's go back to our filter and sorting panel and continue with the next feature, which is the auto zoom feature. The auto zoom feature allows your users to automatically travel to the viewport with all filtered elements. After enabling the auto zoom feature, when filtering for a property, for example, with our basic filter, we can see that the map zooms in to the filtered items. If we deactivate the filter, it's zooming back out to the main viewport again. If we now search for New York City, we'll zoom in on all items visible as well. If we now change the radius, we'll zoom out for the viewport, showing all the different pins for that filter combination. When we're setting the filter, we're zooming back to our default zoom level, and really comes in handy when combined with the live filtering feature. Let's continue with the next feature, which is the range slider, which sits down here at the bottom of the filter and search panel. And when creating the range slider, you can see that only number fields are visible. Let's select the price field and add our range slider. And we can even just apply the range slider filter on release. Let's select that for improved UX and press save. And you can see that the range slider comes with a min and a max slider number, which have the NCF slider number and the NCF slider number right classes. Then we do have the slider bar, which is styled like this by default. We have the active part of the sliders, so everything that is active will be styled with this color. The slider bar itself with this color, and then we do have the drag handles for left and right, which also have a range label on top of them with the current minimum and the current maximum loading the page. So let's see the range slider in action. Let's publish it. Let's drag the left handle and the right handle to filter items that are too pricey or too cheap for our search. And you can see once I'm moving the handles back, all elements appear again. Let's continue with the favoriting feature, which is below the add-ons panel. In the add-ons panel, select the favoriting option, and you can see that a filter ID as well as the option to create a filter tag and for the favorites, and the option to connect with Memberstack appear. Let's press save for now without selecting these options, and you can see that dynamic map automatically inserts the favoriting items. And when publishing the page, we can see that the favoriting button already works and allows us to locally save items that we want to save for later. So let's select the Saddle River and the Alpine Hilltop Mansion and save and favorite these. And after reloading, we can see that the items are still selected. But for a map, usually it would make sense to create a filter button inside the map pop-up. So to do that, you can simply go to your Webflow designer, copy the NCF favorite button, and paste it inside the crew NCF pop-up element right here. So let's give the NCF favorite button a bit of a margin to top. Now when publishing, we can see that the filter button is also visible on the tooltip. Now we can favorite items into the tooltip as well as on the item list. To now allow filtering for these items, which comes in handy for some use cases, we want to head over to the add-ons panel again and select the create filter tag for favorites and press save. Now you can see that dynamic map is inserting elements, and when scrolling to the top of our map container, we can see that a category filter has been placed with the name favorite. So this is our favorite item filter chip. To make sure that this is easily recognizable, let's set the favorite button. Let's insert the favorite button inside the filter chip and set a custom filter chip class. And we can call it NCF filter chip favorite, and give this a flex gap of 0.5 REM. And now we have our favorite filter button. Let's see if this works. So when publishing, our Webflow site, I should be able to just see items that I've been favorited when selecting this filter, and we can see it works. So to style these different states for the favorite button itself, let's scroll down to the style guide, and we can see that we have 3 different favorite button styles. The first is the default state, the second is the active state, working similar to our other states that we styled before. In this case, the class is not called active, but favorited, and we also do have a disabled state. The disabled state, though, is only required if you're using the map and the Memberstack integration. So to use the Memberstack integration, open up the filter, open up the add-ons panel, and press connect with Memberstack. When then saving in dynamic map and publishing on your Webflow page, you will be able to see that all favorite buttons are now in the disabled state. That's because now only people logged in using Memberstack on your site can see the favorite button and use the favorite interaction. So let's go ahead and insert the Memberstack code on our website to test out if it works. Just head over to Memberstack, go to the settings section and to the install code, copy the code, head over to your site settings and insert the custom code in your Webflow head code field. Just like this, press save, and then press publish to make sure the changes are applied. Let's close this, go back to our Webflow designer. Let's press publish. Now I can see in the Memberstack test mode that I'm currently not logged in. Let's log in. So now after logging in, I can see that I'm now a logged in member with my email address and create a date. And now when hiding the inspector, I can see that I can favorite elements again. And I can also filter for my favorite items. I can unfavorite them again. And now when logging out of this account and logging in with the same account on a different browser, on a different device, I can see that still the items that I favorited before are favorited. That makes it super easy to create really advanced applications with this, because usually when you're not using the Memberstack integration, the favorited items are just saved on your local browser, meaning that when I'm logging in with my smartphone, the favorited items on my desktop aren't saved on my phone. Let's continue with our next feature, which is the map items count. So when heading over to the add-ons panel, I can see the counter down here. And to enable all 3 possible counters, head over to the interactions panel and show the list item based on map view. So the map zoom filter that we created before. Head over to add-ons again, and you can see that 3 counts are now visible. You can filter, you can display results count, items count, and visible count. That means for the first count is the count for all filtered items. The items count is the count for all items, and the visible count are all items that are currently visible in the viewport. So let's press save and wait until Dynamic Map app finishes to insert all of these items. Now we can see that the filtered items have been inserted as well. So let's move them next to each other and see how it works. So let's create a div where we place the different labels. So now I can see my 3 counts next to each other. Now let's properly label them to see how and what actually does what. Let's start with the visible count. So 1 item is visible. Let's reload the designer since it's being buggy. 1 item is visible. Let's copy paste the text one item is using the current filter selection, and one item is items in total. Let's add a 1 or 0.5 REM gap and press publish. Now we can see the different results counts that we have in action. So let's start by filtering for townhouses. So now 50 items are visible, 50 items are using the current filter selection, which both have some typos. Let's fix that. Items are visible in the current filter location. Items. We can see that by default 100 items are visible, 100 items are using the current filter selection, and 100 items exist in total. So let's filter for basics. So now we can see 33 items are visible and 33 items are using the current filter selection. But if I'm zooming in now to these items, I can see that only 5 items are visible, but still 33 items are using the current filter selection. Once I'm starting to add more filters, I can see that the number is changing accordingly. And when zooming and panning in and out on the map, I can see that the visible count is also changing accordingly. All right, let's get to the next feature, which is the unlimited items. So by default, Webflow cuts off after 100 items. So at the moment, we only see 100 items visible on your page. After that, all other items are hidden. So to enable 100 items, you have to go to the collection list of the map item list and set pagination to 100. You will have to do the same for the NCF tooltip pop-up collection list. So pagination to 100. And in general, it's really important to keep, if you want to apply filters or sorting on your collection list, to keep these two in sync. So please keep that in mind. And now we should see that there are 200 items visible in total. And when zooming in, we can see that 7 items are visible out of 200 items that are using the current filter selection, but we now have 200 items in total. The last feature we're going to look at is the multi-reference workaround. Insert a new filter and sorting option. In this case, we want to create one amenity which is called Wi-Fi, and we just want the user to be able to press a button that is saying Wi-Fi, and then just showing the amenities that do have Wi-Fi. So to get this done, we have to create a new category filter for Wi-Fi. Let's also select the filter chip, press save, reinsert the code inside the custom code embed, and press code pasted. Now we can see that the amenity filter chips are created. So these are the filter chips for our options saying yes and no. So inside our CMS, we can see that the Wi-Fi input is having 2 different options, one being yes and one being no. And for our UI, we want to remove the no option and replace the yes with Wi-Fi. And now we want to press publish. So what happens with this filter is that only the properties with the amenity Wi-Fi are visible when pressing the Wi-Fi filter. And when resetting the filter, again, all properties are visible again. So now bring your map to life on your live domain, head over to the license tab in Dynamic Map app and insert the license key that you buy via Gumroad. After you bought the license via Gumroad, insert the license key. After inserting your license key, a slot for your live domain will appear down here. In your live domain, insert your domain, like your domain.com. And then Dynamic Map automatically connects your domain with our license, allowing you to display your newly created map on your live page. In case you have any questions, feel free to contact our support or take a look at our docs that are available on our website. Just type in nocode.net/dynamicmap/docs and you can see an overview of all the different features Dynamic Map has to offer. And joining me today, and happy building. Bye bye.